Indian literature in English. The Serpent and the Rope. It is a novel. Dear listener, Raja Rao is one of the most significant Indian English writers. Rao has written 5 novels, 3 collections of short stories, a work of non-fiction prose and biography of Gandhi. The Serpent and the Rope is considered to be his most complex novel. The Serpent and the Rope illustrates his philosophy of life. The Hindu philosophy, particularly Shankara's philosophy of non-dualism, explicitly states the difference between the physical world, the Atman, it means soul, and the supreme consciousness, Brahman. According to the Upanishads, the whole world is Maya, which can be transcended through the path of Gnana. Gnana means knowledge. To reach the absolute reality Brahman, the ordinary man imagines the serpent when he looks at the rope in the darkness of the night, but during daylight the rope appears to be what it is. The light of the day, it means the knowledge, helps us remove the slough of delusion of the serpent and see the rope. It is this preoccupation with the knowledge of the self that prompts Ramaswamy, the protagonist, to go in search of the absolute truth. Marriage with the French lady Madeleine does not bring him the inner peace. However, he successfully constructs a dialogue between Buddhism and Hinduism to prove the superiority of the latter. Madeleine turns a Buddhist because she cannot understand the unfathomable meaninglessness of life, whose realization would lead to moksha. She thinks that Buddhism may offer a better solace to escape from the gripping agony of suffering, it means sorrow, in life. But she too is not happy. Ramaswamy is emotionally bound to the cultural vibrancy of India. Finally, he comes back to India because he realizes that whatever the path is to reach the Brahman, one needs a guru to guide him, and that guru is in India, waiting for an initiated disciple. Ramaswamy's coming back is a sort of circular vision of the philosophy. All things are connected. Savitri is the unquestioning epitome of Hindu faith in the unity of things, and Rama is still searching for self. Thus, the extreme unification theory of the Hinduism is explicitly revealed in the Serpent and the Rope. The search for the absolute or the truth has always been a recurring theme in Indian literature. Now listen the Raja Rao's The Serpent and the Rope. Good luck. The Serpent and the Rope. It is a novel recognized for its distinctive achievement in Indian English fiction. Raja Rao has successfully evolved a new fictional form in the novel, one which can be legitimately termed truly Indian. This, however, does not rule out Western influence in the novel. After reading this unit, after listening this audio, you should be able to explain the term Indian novel in English, know something about the life and works of Raja Rao, state the theme of the novel, its narrative technique, and understand the nature of Ramaswamy's relationship with Madeleine. About the novel The Serpent and the Rope. One of the fundamental prerequisites for learning to respond to a novel is to first read it. Even though this is a very obvious fact, the general tendency is to avoid reading the novel, and hence, my first task is to ask you to get hold of a copy of the text and start reading it. No doubt, I must warn you at the very outset that the reading of The Serpent and the Rope is not going to be easy. For in this work, Raja Rao has made a liberal use of philosophy, history, religion, and metaphysics. This work has been called a novel of ideas, a metaphysical novel, a philosophical novel, and even as a work that cannot be called a novel at all. This, as you will realize, is nothing unusual, for anything new and unique in literature has evoked, at least initially, hostile reactions. The first critical responses to the metaphysical poets, Hopkins' poetry and Joyce's fiction, can be cited as examples. Gradually, however, these responses have given way to one of acceptance and to an even enthusiastic recognition of their achievement. Raja Rao does make certain departures from the novel form as we have come to know and identify it. Whether these departures are a logical offshoot of the new sense of the experience to be mediated is a moot point for consideration. A novel which has for its theme the growth towards self-knowledge of Brahmin intellectual Ramaswamy, who is given to interminable philosophical reflections, intellectual pursuits, and metaphysical discussions, certainly demands a more fluid novel form than what Rajarao had employed in his first novel, Kantapura. In communicating the genuinely Indian experience of Ramaswamy, Rajarao has evolved a novel that can perhaps, with justification, take on the label Indian. That is too mean. The Serpent and the Rope is different from the other Indian novels in English, which are primarily Indian in the theme but more often than not Western in technique. While Mulk Raj Anand uses the European realistic novel form, R.K. Narayan finds the comic ironic mood of Jane Austen suitable to describe his vision of life. Rao, on the other hand, creates a work that is Indian both in its theme and technique. I must hasten to add, as suggested earlier, that this does not rule out certain Western influences on the novel. Life of Raja Rao. Raja Rao, born in 1909 at Hassan, had his early education at Hyderabad and Aligarh. He went to France for his higher studies and was educated at the universities of Montpellier and Paris. Rao spent a number of years in the 1940s and 50s until he finally went to the University of Texas at Austin in 1961, where he has since been teaching Indian and Buddhist philosophy. During his various visits to India, Rao came under the influence of Gandhi, Sir Aurobindo Ramana Maharshi, and Pandit Tarnatha, with most of whom he spent considerable periods of time in their ashrams. The climax to his spiritual quest was his meeting with Sri Atmananda Guru at Trivandrum in 1943. Like a true guru, he clarified Rao's metaphysical doubts and revealed to him the path of self-knowledge. Rao had been visiting India regularly till the early 90s in order to replenish his spiritual roots. Raja Rao has received many honors during his lifetime. The Serpent and the Rope was awarded the Sahitya Academy Prize in 1964. Rao was conferred with Padma Bhushan in 1969. He was elected Fellow of the Woodrow Wilson International Center, Washington, D.C. in 1972 and of the Sahitya Academy in 1997. He was named 10th laureate of the Newsdat International Prize of Literature in 1998. Now we know works of Raja Rao. Raja Rao is regarded as one of the most significant Indian English novelists. It was in the 1930s that Indian English fiction came into its own as a recognizable literary mode. Raja Rao's Kantapura, it was written in 1938. Mulk Rajanan's Untouchable, it was written in 1935. And R.K. Narayan Swamy and Friends 1935 are generally regarded as the forerunners of the Indian English novel. Rao has written 5 novels. Kantapura, it was written in 1938. The Serpent and the Rope, it was written 1960. The Cat and Shakespeare, it was written in 1965. Comrade Kirillov, it was written in 1976. And The Chess Master and His Moves, it was written in 1988. 3 collections of short stories. The Cow of the Barricades and Other Stories, it was written in 1947. The Policeman and the Rose, it was written in 1978. And the Ganga Ghat, it was written in 1989. A work of non-fiction prose, The Meaning of India, it was written in 1997. And a biography of Gandhi, The Great India Way, A Life of Mahatma Gandhi, were written in 1998. Raja Rao's profound awareness of his Indian heritage along with his being an expatriate gives him a unique place among Indian writers in English. His own conception of literature as a spiritual discipline is important, and this has to be kept in mind when we read his works. Here is his elaborate statement in this regard. For me, literature is sadhana. It means spiritual discipline, not a profession but a vocation. My writing is mainly the consequence of metaphysical life. What I mean by sadhana, I had this conflict in me. Should a man be a writer first and then a man? Secondly, or a man first and a writer afterwards? And by man, I mean the metaphysical entity. So the idea of literature as anything but a spiritual experience is outside my perspective. I really think that only through dedication to the absolute or metaphysical principle can one be fully creative. Literature as a sadhana is the best life for a writer. The Indian tradition, which links the word with the absolute, Shabda Brahman, it means Shabda Brahman, has clearly shown the various ways by which one can approach literature without the confusions that arise in the mind of the Western writer viewing life as an intellectual adventure. Basically, the Indian outlook follows a deeply satisfying, richly rewarding, and profoundly metaphysical path. The entire corpus of Rajarav's writings has to be viewed in the light of this manifesto. The theme of the novel, The Serpent and the Rope. The Serpent and the Rope is about the marriage of Ramaswamy and Madeline. There is also the relationship between Ramaswamy and Savitri. Ramaswamy is a Vedantin and an avowed believer in the non-dualistic philosophy of Sri Shankara of the 19th century. It means 9th century. This determines his attitudes towards people, places, and his view of life. In marrying a French woman, Madeleine, the author portrays the encounter between the East and the West, in which generalizations about the two races are made, and there is also an implied judgment and evolution of the two views of life. The relationship of Ramaswamy and Savitri posited by the novelist as the ideal one between a man and woman is offered not merely as a contrast to the Ramaswamy-Madeline relationship but rather more as a corrective. And the novel also projects an interesting image of India. The Serpent and the Rope describes the growth of Ramaswamy towards self-knowledge. You should be able to discuss the path chosen by Ramaswamy to achieve this goal of his, the Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge. Rajarao has traced this growth in terms of his relationship with Madeline and Savitri. Now we know about narrative technique of the novel. The narrative technique is a very significant aspect of the novel. In view of this, let us first take a critical look at the Brahminical consciousness operating in the narrator Ramaswamy, who is also the protagonist of the novel. Once this operative consciousness is established, everything else, his marriage to Madeline, his relation with Savitri, and his view of India falls into its proper place. By choosing the first person narrative, Rajarao has made Ramaswamy the central consciousness in the novel, through whom we observe everything else. It is this Brahminical point of view that determines the nature of the image of India in the novel. An attempt will now be made to define the truly Brahminical sensibility as seen in a foreign educated intellectual like Ramaswamy. And this in turn should be also enable us to identify whether Rajarao has idealized the Brahmin or not, and whether he is aware of the degeneration that has set in the Brahmin of recent times. In that case, it should be examined how far irony is used as an operative principle. The novel opens with, "I was born a Brahmin that is devoted to truth and all that," and curiously enough has a reference to the Brahmin on the last page of the novel as well. A Brahmin is he who knows Brahman. That is one definition. There is another, a roguish definition. A Brahmin is he who loves a good banquet. One sees the ideal and perhaps the actual in both instances. The ideal is tempered with irony, and this makes for a healthy attitude in the writer, who is not given to merely romanticizing the position of the Brahmin. As a matter of actual fact, the roguish definition has long enjoyed a proverbial status. Such ironical references are scattered throughout the novel, but whether there is a sustained ironical perspective is doubtful despite the opinion to the contrary. Ramaswamy says he is a good Brahmin and that he even knew grammar and the Brahma Sutras. Read the Upanishads at the age of 4, was given the holy thread at 7. This is perhaps not too credible, and yes, Nagarajan wonders rightly whether Raja Rao does not slip up here, and thanks to his education and his sojourns to France and England, he describes himself aptly as a European Brahmin, as referred to earlier. He is a believer in Advaita Vedanta, and this is synonymous with India for him. That is why he asserts that duality is anti-Indian. The non-dual affirms the truth. He declares the Brahmin, the Vedantin, has such arrogance, and one might as well as ask whether Ramaswamy is himself free from this arrogance, for he does confess in his first meeting with Savitri. The fact that I was a Brahmin by birth and a South Indian seemed to have given me a natural superiority. Later, he tells her in that famous scene in his London hotel room, a Brahmin is necessary to educate you all, kings, queens, peasants, and merchants. The feeling of superiority persists till the very end, as when he says, a Brahmin can touch anything. He is so high, the higher the freer. This superiority is further made clear when he uses the Brahmin as the ideal for truth, virtue, and all that which makes for the highest excellence. And that is why, when he finds the England during the spring of 1953 and the eve of the coronation, very courteous and without any triumphant arrogance, he observes they have grown more Brahminical. While these observations have more to do with the intellectual side of the Brahmin, even the physical emphasis gets its due. Being a Brahmin, he is endowed with very sensitive olfactory organs, and that is the reason why he prefers to travel by train, for the bus is all right, but all the smell and this rubbing against one another, this expresses itself in his uneasiness when he cannot stand the bad odors that emanate from Madeline's body during her 41-day fast. While this is perhaps understandable, what is rather amusing is that even in one of his dreams he sees George's teaching Shakespeare and the students laughing, and they were all Indians, and he adds, they smelt bad and they all seemed sons of princes. There is another variation of this obsession when he meets an Italian girl in a cafe in Paris and gives her some money and takes her address but never goes to see her, for he remarks, I needed the smell of camphor and the yellow of turmeric on the limbs. Even in his food habits, his Brahminical taste comes through. Oh, it was so wonderful to have rasam with asafoetida in it and chutney with coconut and coriander leaf. All these details establish for the reader the person of Ramaswamy as one who is uncompromisingly Brahminical in his tastes, attitudes, and view of life. And now to the ironical references about Brahmins. Curiously enough, they are all carefully linked with the fall of the Brahmin from his exalted spiritual status. The fall is due to his material desires, a sure sign of his decadence, as Rajarao seems to suggest. At Benros, when the Brahmin priest refused to perform the ceremonies on the ground that Ramaswamy has been to Europe and married a French woman. Little mother gives more money, and the irony is scathing. Just 50 silver rupees made everything holy. That is the reason why Rama says, I would rather have thrown the rupees to the begging monkeys than to the Brahmins. Then during Saroja's wedding, the Brahmins fawn on Ramaswamy and show their 32 teeth, for they know there would be nothing lacking in honor and silver. If their servility is the target of Raja Rao here, he does not spare the Brahmin for his enormous appetite either. There are Brahmins, imagine, that do 3 funerals a day, from their belchings and rounded bellies much food has already gone into them. But is only the following ironical statement about the Brahmin which is significant because it goes behind the traditional criticism of Brahmins that it is seen in the preceding references. The Brahmins sold India through the back door. Remember, Devagiri and the Muslims came in through the front. Purnaya sold the secrets of Tipu Sultan, and the British entered through the main gateway of Srirangapatnam. Truth that is without courage can only be the virtue of slave or widow. According to C.D. Narasimhaya, this betrayal is motivated, it appears, by the sordid ambition of the cultural elite, by the governing elite, without the necessary courage to equal the ambition. Surely this is perspective insight of Raja Rao into one of the causes for the downfall of the Brahmin, but it should be reiterated that this is the only instance we have in the entire novel. And so it can be said that irony is only incidental to the novel and a consistent use of it is absent in the work. In view of this, one is forced to add that the overwhelming impression we have in the novel is the glorification of the Brahmin as personified in the character of Ramaswamy, who is also the narrator in the novel. Thus, the novel is completely colored by the point of view of one who is almost wholly proud of his rich Brahminical heritage. Ramaswamy's search. Ramaswamy's individual search is closely related to his being a Brahmin. Having lost his mother at a young age, he has persistently experienced the feelings of an orphan. I was born an orphan, and have remained one. I have wandered the world, and have sobbed in hotel rooms and in trains, have looked at the cold mountains and sobbed, for I had no mother. One day, and that was when I was 22, I sat in a hotel. It was in the Pyrenees, and I sobbed, for I knew I would never see my mother again. This is indeed most moving, for in the words of C.D. Narasimhaya, poignancy is personal and metaphysical. There were a series of deaths in the family culminating with that of his father, and from the beginning he has feelings that point to an acute consciousness of absence within him. Something had just missed me in life. Some deep absence grieved in me, like a coconut on a young tree, that no love or learning could fulfill. I was anxious about something, anxious with an anxiety that had no beginning and so no maturity. This persists even in England. I knew no peace. All was an absence, like the space over the bare trees and the camp. The traditional Indian view regards life as a pilgrimage, and so does Ramaswamy, the true Indian, an integral aspect of Raja Rao's image of the India. The two Indian waves of life are commonly described as the Prariti Marga, Pravruti Marga, or the path of active life, and Nivrutti Marga, or the path of renunciation. Ramaswamy opts for the former sense, that is the way for one like him, and while Murthy of Kantapura chose the way of action, Karma Marga, Ramaswamy, befitting an intellectual, chooses the way of knowledge, it means Gnana Marga, to achieve self-knowledge. The first articulation that life is a pilgrimage comes very early in the novel. Life is pilgrimage, I know, but I pilgrimage to where and of what? And it recurs at regular intervals. I felt what I always know, I am a pilgrim. Life is one long pilgrimage. The anguish of the first cry persists throughout. Lord, how can one ever get out of oneself? The climax is reached when we read this in his diary. Yes, I say to myself, I must leave this world. I must leave this world. But Lord, where shall I go? Where? How can one can go anywhere? How can one go from oneself? And soon after, he, a holy vagabond who had wandered like a sacred cow in various countries, realizes that he needs a guru. For now I know the name of him to whom I have to go, though I have always known him without knowing his name. So to Travancore I will go. All the deeper philosophical truths related to the Advaitic view of life are brought out with understanding by the novelist. What is it to live on this earth, and what is the mission of one's life, are the basic questions that confront every Indian. In Ramaswamy, all these are asked with a sense of urgency that reveals to us his sensitivity and his deep awareness of his roots, both cultural and philosophical. Being an intellectual, he can articulate this awareness in a highly convincing manner. And being an Advaitin, he asserts, there can be only two attitudes to life. Either you believe the world exists and so you, or you believe that you exist and so the world. There is no compromise possible. The first is the Marxist position, the second is the Vedantins, and they are irreconcilable. He is also aware that the meaning of life is Leela, play, and that not achievement but self-recognition is a pure significance. What constitutes a real journey for a true Brahmin is stated beautiful in the following passage. For the going inward in the true birth, he is indeed the Brahmin who turns the crest inward. Even if you are a Pandit great as Jagannath Bhatta or learnt in logic as Kapilacharya, the true life, the true Brahminhood commences when you recognize yourself in your eternity. At some moment you must stop life and look into it. Marriage or maternity, pain or the intimacy of success, love may dip you into yourself. And the novel is the dramatization of this inward journey of Ramaswamy. The word dramatization is used in a restricted sense because while some ideas are enacted, some others are merely stated. This aspect of the novel will receive a detailed treatment in the discussion of the form of the novel. Ramaswamy's marriage with Medellin. There are two important constituents of Ramaswamy's journey: his marriage with Medellin and his relationship with Savitri. These are of central importance in his life since both take him closer in different ways to an awareness of his own self and the ultimate meaning of existence that constitutes the search for a Brahmin like him. First, let us consider his marriage with Medellin. Since Rajarao has made Ramaswamy the narrator, everything in the